All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome, everyone. My name is Scott Solberg. I'm professor at Boston University, but I also play the role of vice president for research. I think it's initiatives, sorry about the spelling. Really excited about this whole policy series that Spencer's been helping us coordinate. In today's, we're talking about the pillar on technology, but our Coalition for Career Development Center with a big white paper we had on these 5 pillars is really focused on a broad range of issues related to career readiness and in trying to support states, industry, and families to really build equitable systems that enable all youth and young adults to be able to thrive, be able to see a future, and be able to get the skills and access to the training as well as post-secondary pathways in order to reach those goals, and really looking at building aspirations at the end of the day and helping them achieve those aspirations. So if you want to hit the next slide. We are working hard to really build consensus across the country. And we do that with our state leaders network. We do it with these policy forums. We do it with our research as well, to really make this idea of career readiness and the focus on career development as the #1 priority in our education system. That we feel that, and we have data to support that when we're focused on helping youth find these futures and build these aspirations, all the college readiness indicators we're hoping to strive for, they all work out because the individual is now driving themselves towards these successful outcomes and more rigorous academic opportunities, and most importantly, really identifying pathways where they're going to get the transferable skills needed to really become not only employable, but have the transferable skills to go into multiple arenas. Next one there we go. So these are the 5, and today you see technology. We've talked about the prioritizing career planning, and we're really big fans of the personalized career and academic plans. We've had career advising, talked about that, work-based learning. Technology today is a really exciting topic because we know that in order for career development to take place, we have to have a tool. We have to have tools, and the tool that we're using are these online career information systems, and they come in many forms, they come in many styles. The goal of today is to hear from some of the technology people, some of the CEOs that are involved in this technology, to tell us about, what are they thinking? What is the role of technology from their perspective? What have they been learning and leaning into as they've evolved? They've been in this space for many years in some cases, and really trying to think about what are the problems they're trying to solve when they think about bringing technology into schools and to communities and such. So we're really excited about this. Kevin Houchin is going to be our leader on this. He's the chair of our technology committee at the CCD Center. He's just coming in new and already putting him up in front of a panel. So we're really excited. So I think this is my last slide. And Kevin, I think I'm turning it over to you.
Great. Go ahead. I'm Kevin Houchin, and hello to everybody, and thank you for being on the call. I am the new chair of the technology committee, but I'm not new to CCD. I was one of the original folks at the table way back when we started this project, and that was during my time at ACT, working in national programs. And I got a chance to meet pretty much all of the panelists and a lot of you on the call during those days. Now I'm at RID Labs, which is a education-focused artificial intelligence technology company, and doing some exciting stuff here. So today's panel, let's go ahead and get into that, is full of, first, sorry about that. First, I want to just set up the context about career readiness technology and planning in the context of state level policy across the country. And the CCD centers put together the following statistics, which say, a lot of the states in DC have a process in place and are recognizing the importance of career and academic planning, but are not necessarily requiring it or providing the software or getting into really full programming to support it. So on the panel today, we have folks that are working in all the different levels of that, including experts that are providing some of the required platforms and working at the state level to put the policies in place to help implement all of the things that we're talking about. So if you go ahead. One thing too today, we have experts and leaders of individual companies that are in this field day to day, but it's important to remember that the CCD Center and this call, or this webinar today and discussion today is not intended at all to endorse or support any individual company. We're going to be agnostic as a technology committee in terms of how things go, and are trying to just give everybody a chance to come to the table and really put ideas and opportunities and resources in front of the coalition stakeholders and center stakeholders to be able to quickly find the benefits, find the features, and find the technologies that they need to reach their goals. Today, what we'll be discussing mostly is what those goals are, how to frame some of those discussions and get going through things. So I'll do a brief introduction on each of the panelists, and then we're going to jump into some questions and round robin. If you have other questions, please put them in the chat, and our moderators will call attention to them. Probably have to interrupt me or one of the speakers to get us there, but I'll try to do the best I can in multitasking around that. In order as they're listed on the slide, Dr. Terry Holliday is joining us today. He served as the Commissioner of Education in Kentucky from 2009 to 2015. Since retirement, and I don't think he's necessarily gotten an A in retirement yet, he's worked with states, nonprofits, and technology companies on career development strategies. One of the things that I've asked Dr. Holliday to be able to discuss today is really his perspective as a state commissioner on how career development and the career development technology can bridge some of the discussions at the state level, policy level, between education policy, workforce development policy, and economic development policy. Next on the list is Matt McQuillan, who is the co-founder and CEO of Zello. They make engaging online programs to help K-12 students plan for college career and future success. And I've asked Matt to also bring some of his expertise around the topic of just the market and how we implement these systems when the purchaser of the technology is generally an institutional buyer, a state or a district or a school or even a parent, but the service is provided to the student. And so kind of how do those things make this an interesting challenge? Next is Eddie Monnier, and he is the CEO and CFO of ZAP, which is XAP corporation, and ZAP is about equity among post-secondary pathways and helping all students explore, plan, and achieve success on their best fit post-secondary pathway. ZAP serves state agencies, school districts, and individual schools. And I met Eddie when working on a project in Oklahoma, because Oklahoma has a statewide ICAP requirement and provided the technology that is a white labeled version of ZAP's Choices 360 platform. And I've asked Eddie to bring some of his expertise around institutional implementation at the state and district level, and what are some of the nuances of those things. Finally, we have Casey Welch. And Casey is the CEO and a co-founder of Tallo. Many of you probably learned about Tallo or met Casey back when Tallo was known as STEM Premier. I can never spell Premier, so Tallo is much easier. Thank you for making that change, Casey. Tallo is a mission-driven company helping over 1.7 million, with an M, students to guide, showcase, and most importantly, directly connect with colleges and companies across the country, removing barriers that exist today while providing an instant curated career network of opportunities for all. And I've asked Casey to focus a little bit on his unique perspective in bringing the employers to the table when it comes to educational technology. So the first question that we'll go to, and we'll go in order and round robin some quick answers around that, are really the first and foremost question is, in each of your opinions, what should career development systems features include, at least at a minimum? So what are the baseline components that we absolutely have to have for a successful system? And I'm tired of listening to myself talk, so I'll turn it over to Terry. Can you respond to that minimum requirements question right quick?
Sure, thanks, Kevin. I think the larger view as a state chief and someone involved with lots of states over the last 5 or 6 years, the policy term is very important here. And I think at a minimum, your technology's got to address several key policy areas. Back in 2010, there were only 2 states that included career readiness in their No Child Left Behind accountability report card, and that was Kentucky, Louisiana. Since then, we're up to about 40 states. So you got to have technology to measure career readiness. And then when Perkins was reauthorized, the technology became so critical to monitor the data, conduct local needs assessments, and monitor the outcomes of the credentials and your CTE programs. And then with workforce development, the connection between Perkins with K-12 and post-secondary became so critical to monitor the placement of students into the workforce and to monitor their starting salaries and jobs. And these things have become critical for states to have in their technology systems. And the latest emerging trend is around credentials. Do the credentials that they earn in these CTE programs at the K-12 or post-secondary lead to jobs that pay a living wage? How do you track that over time? And what usually happens is states come together around a big policy area called procurement. And procurement for technology usually starts with some type of request for information from companies like on the call today to find out what is out there, what is working, who's got what. And then it turns into a request for proposal that is a bid process and part of the procurement process. A couple of states that I could highlight in the last couple of years, Indiana did a really nice job with their procurement specifications, which are key policy issues. Florida did a great job with a balanced scorecard administrative approach on their RFP. And at a minimum, if you go to these RFPs, you can kind of find the technical requirements. You've got technical requirements, you've got security requirements, then you have user requirements. You've got users for like students. You've got to be able to address the all the stages of career readiness, career exploration, career awareness, career planning, career placement, and be able to do all that online and help students and parents. That's a user group that's critical to be able to understand what's out there, what do the jobs pay, do these jobs match my skill set, my interests, my abilities. You got to have aptitude, interest inventories on the career awareness and exploration page. And then you got to have pathway description and links to pathways between K-12 and post-secondary. Without that, you can't assure a transition for parents. And you got to have a lot of cost information. What's the return on investment if I go into this pathway and versus this pathway? And where is a pathway that leads to the appropriate credential near me? And how much does it cost compared to somewhere else? Then you've got administrators. You've got counselors that need to track all this. They need to track that students are completing their ICAPs, their pathways. Then you've got administrators that need to track the impact of the programs and the number of credentials awarded, the successful transitions. Then, and probably the most important, you got to connect employers. Employers have got to be able to be involved in the technology to be able to upload, update information, to provide online mentors, to provide apprenticeships, free apprenticeships, to provide levels of support for online job fairs and that kind of thing. During the pandemic, we have found out how critical the technology is. And eventually you need all this technology and data to go to your state policymakers, your governor, your legislators, and convince them, like many states have done, that we need to invest more funds in these particular pathways and these initiatives. So this is probably the emerging, a little past emerging. This is the blooming area for technology. It's not where it needs to be yet. There are a lot more things I could mention and will mention when we talk about what we've been seeing among states and technology providers in the last 6 to 8 months. So thank you for that question, Kevin.
All right, that was a pretty comprehensive answer, and checked a lot of the boxes that I had on my list. I have a few things that might come up or might not come up in the rest of the time, but Matt, why don't you give us your perspective on that?
Sure. And first of all, I want to thank Dr. Holliday for covering the breadth of functionality that these programs have to deliver. It is quite immense. So when I think about what do these systems have to deliver, there are 3 things in my mind. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, I started in this industry in 1995. And when I was doing my market research into whether or not a career development system was needed for students, the program that I looked at and felt like, okay, we can do better was based in DOS. So we're talking Windows 3.1 was a big advantage. If we could release on that platform, we'd be far ahead of DOS. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of like how long I've been doing this.
You don't look that old.
Thank you. Thank you. The second thing is, I think for the first 20 years that I worked in this business, I was focused on the first part of what I think these systems should deliver. Broadly, it's career development. It's everything that Dr. Holliday talked about. But what the purpose of all that, what the deliverable actually is helping students to create a plan for what they're going to do after high school. And there are many, many things that go into that. So that's what we were building for the first 20 years. When we sat down to do the second iteration of our program, we discovered something that was not part of what we'd been building and what we had assumed was always there, which were the knowledge and skills that students need to build that plan, to make decisions. So when we started talking to students, what we realized is that they knew nothing about the real world. They couldn't tell you the difference between a 2-year and a 4-year college, let alone what is an apprenticeship, an industry certification. All of these things that we think they understand, they are really lacking in any basic knowledge. So the second thing about these systems is they have to teach the knowledge and skills that are needed in order to make decisions.
Is it safe to label those navigation skills?
That's definitely one of them. There's also just basic knowledge, right? Like, what are your learning pathways that you could transition into the world of work or wherever you want to go? What's the military pathway look like?
Okay.
No clue, right? So it's partly knowledge, and then like you mentioned, Kevin, the skills, right, of how you manage that process. So that's number 2. And the third one is really something I've been talking about for the last year, I've come to believe, which is that these systems and these tools are only 50% of the answer, if that. The other part, the most important part, are the power of conversations. And ideally, that's with a caring adult. Could be a counselor, could be a teacher, could be a parent. So this is something I've been talking about and believe myself, like students can't do it in isolation within these systems. And then there was a study released in November from the Institute of Education Sciences, which basically identified that the students who benefited the most from career development were those that had a conversation in high school with a caring adult.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. So that's my answer for what's needed.
That last piece, it hits one of the notes that I made while Dr. Holliday was talking about the need to empower counselors, and whether that's a capital C counselor or a lowercase c, advisor, or a counselor that is just ad hoc, a mentor, those kind of things. And one of the great things that the CCD Center has helped work on is some work with NCDA around creating a paraprofessional career development advisor certification to help put knowledgeable counselors into the places where they can have those conversations. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And that's one of the other pillars of the CCD's work. So we won't go into it today, but those three things are great. So thank you.
Sure.
Eddie, why don't you take a stab at jumping in on this?
Sure. Lots of great comments to build on. First, I would say that it would be a dream if every school had a career counselor, multiple career counselors on staff to help students. In today's world, it's an increasingly complex set of options that students face, which many of us didn't face 20 years ago, and also an ever-increasing workforce faced with all sorts of uncertainty, coupled with the fact that many industries today are the number one concern is future talent pipeline. So we're really sort of at this center storm, the eye of the storm, in a mix of volatility which we haven't seen. So despite the fact that career development has never been more important in our history, it's receiving less and less attention in schools. Counselors are stretched too thin. They have too many students. There's an increasing number of requirements demanding time. So it's quite a situation that we're in. We're hoping that with technology we can help solve some of these issues. As far as what these systems need to include, validated assessments that are age appropriate so the students can gain a better understanding of themselves, helpful and current career information across the spectrum of post-secondary pathways. Many of us, when we were younger, you were either going to four-year college or you were going into a trade. Today, there's lots of options. And I think many of us would acknowledge that straight to four-year college is not the right path for many folks, or even most folks. But we need to make students aware of what their options are so that they can make informed decisions about their best fit career options. And then we need to provide planning tools that support their success once they've identified a pathway that resonates with them, and understand that in today's increasingly complex environment, we don't see many situations where someone heads into one career and that's their career for their entire life. I've been through multiple career changes. Matt's been through career changes, and that's really the norm today. So we want to prepare students for a lifetime of successful transitions. And then we have to wrap all of this with accountability and reporting to the various stakeholders so that we can track what is working, what isn't working, and direct our policy and funding dollars to those initiatives that have the biggest impact.
I love that phrase, a lifetime of successful transitions. That's pretty powerful, and kind of the macro level of that knowledge and skills of navigating, a whole lifetime of pursuing careers in whatever fits your phase of life. So thank you for that. Casey, your turn.
Yeah, well, I think going last here and getting a chance,
You get to go first next time. I'll go in reverse order.
No, I want to be efficient. I think I echo everything that everybody said. Supporting multiple pathways, as you just mentioned. After high school, it's a divergent. We're either going 2-year, 4-year military right into the workforce. And I think, so much we've always, harped on, okay, you do really well on tests, you need to go to 4-year. And, we work with a lot of employers out there, and actually helping them to educate on and connect into seeing what's going on. I think that ability to realize that students aren't going to go into one pathway. We need to be able to support multiple ones through their journey. I think Matt said it, Eddie said it, 80% of people change their college major, but we put so much stock into it. The average person changes their career 5 to 7 times. I think the one part as well, if I'm coming more from the corporate perspective that we're seeing with these companies, is we always talk about how do we bring education and business together. Yet sometimes technology, policies, and things like that challenge it, right? You can't directly connect them in different ways. And I think so using this opportunity, as people brought up, as a unique point in time is, the employers, the workforce is continuing change, and it's going to change. And I don't know that it can catch up with education, that it gets those signals down, but creating the foundations into it, like it was touched on from career exploration. It was touched on assessments. I think, we've talked about skills. I think it's also important that we look at other attributes and getting people into careers that they like to do and want to do, not just they can do it. Helping to align all those and support them. And provide those vehicles where we can, in education, leverage employers to help educate, help connect, help bring awareness. Because often, students don't know what's out there, right? Educators don't, counselors don't always doing that. And I was actually getting a little anxiety, I'm not gonna lie, when Dr. Holliday went through that list of all the requirements that are out there that you all have to address. And I can't fathom how you can do all that. And sometimes it has to become somewhat of checking a box. And so, working in tandem that we can help develop as groups solutions to support those journeys, I think are going to be critical. And employers have to play a big role in helping you all on that journey as we get them into those pathways, as they understand where they should go, and supporting multiple journeys, right? Not just one.
Thank you. So I'm going to shift topics just a little bit here because, we talked about the policies and the systems and all this great stuff that's going on to get students the tools they need to do the work that we as adults know is important and probably wish that we had as youth. But I'm the father of 3 teenage kids who are all very, very different. My wife works at a high school doing student sport and tutoring and special education type of things. And I'm working on some other projects with folks dealing with ICAP requirements. And one of the axioms that comes true here is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And you can give students all the tools they want, but giving them another chore is somewhat counterproductive. So I'd like to hear, and I'm going to start with Casey and work backwards up the list, how you are working to engage the students in actually doing the work. And if you can, maybe give an anecdotal example of something that's worked and maybe made some impact or the outcomes and the results that we're looking at, so that there's a practical application of this and an understanding that teenagers are teenagers and their days are packed. So, how do we make doing this kind of work actually something that they will spend a little bit of time on? Casey?
Yeah, happy to jump in there first. And Matt, I'm going to steal something that you said once before when we were on a call together. And, you talked about the breadth of experience you've had in this industry and how sometimes us as technology companies, we have to develop solutions that meet the procurement process and that, check some of the boxes that go through it. But looking at what is the adoption of technology, right, within schools and districts, you can look at requirements, you can look at mandating, and it works really well for the educators as they're a key stakeholder, and the counselors and the administrators. But I think also not forgetting and bringing it into it, if you want somebody to do something, that end user, right? We talk about the student being at the core, using technology that they also feel comfortable with in a way that meets them, in a way that they can understand it. And it's not just forced, but they see how it can be a valuable tool. I think that's really, really an important aspect as we go through that. And sometimes policies and procurements leave them out of the equation, I think. And I think that's a really important part. If we want them to be that lifelong learner and support it and support them through their journey, you know, providing tools that can continue to live with them and build off all the work that they do from, you know, middle school to high school and continue on their pathway are really important. I also think, you know, from an example standpoint, Kevin, you talk about, you know, we're in a really unique time that everybody is embracing technology. And, you know, doing this for about 10 years now, you know, relatively less experienced than a lot of other ones, is that this is the first time that people, you know, that we all as a world got forced virtually. And so providing solutions that support the virtual, the hybrid, and the, you know, in-person, and, you know, that's technology, you know, that's a role, that's part of the battle that it can do. And I think some of the ways, Kevin, that we've seen it is, you know, there is that awareness difference. And I'll give you an example. We work with two quick anecdotes. You know, we work with two different, really different employers. One is Walmart and one is Lockheed Martin, right? And Walmart, you know, they don't have a brand problem. Everybody understands who they are, right? And they have 2 million people a year that work for them, right? But what they have is a problem that people don't understand all the skill sets that they need. And they want to reach into your schools and be able to tap into that talent. However, you know, Walmart, people think of baggers and greeters. They don't think of Walmart as the third largest IT employer in the world. So by having access into talent, into students, using technology to get those messaging, sending those market signals directly to students has changed the game for them. And being able to get them to see, wow, I never thought of Walmart as a STEM employer, but now that you say it, it makes sense. In the same vein, working with a DoD contractor like Lockheed Martin, right? They don't have a consumer facing product, right? And what's interesting is a lot of people think of them and they think of a 4-year Georgia Tech grad, you know, high into engineering, but they're looking to find ways to get into the classrooms to say, no, you have pathways to come into Lockheed Martin via certifications. You have apprenticeships, you have 4-year, you have all these different pathways, and getting those messages to the students and go, look, we also don't assume because we're Lockheed Martin, we're only technologists or engineers. There's a lot of different ways to come and work with our companies that you can get behind. And, you know, that's a big part that we're seeing across the board.
Great. Thank you. And Eddie, your turn.
Sure. In terms of technology making an impact, you know, one example is, you know, with so many states now having individual learning plan mandates, technology is helping make that more realistic to scale those programs. Paper-based systems are inordinately difficult to manage. So if we can have technology-based solutions, it's easier to track and report on. That's sort of a first step. I think just making sure that they're done. That doesn't mean if they're done that they're done well. So, you know, our interest is in the future leveraging technology to actually be able to see is the ILP not only done, but is it a quality plan? Using artificial intelligence to help determine that sort of outcome, I think is down the road a little bit, but sort of the vision of where we'd eventually like to go. But certainly having a plan is an important start. Another example of where technology is making an impact in career development would be better access to data to make informed decisions. So a lot of times what the government reports as far as demand needs for the workforce is dated, you know, 3 or 4 years old, which can be a long time in today's environment. And now with some of the sources of real-time labor market information, students have, you know, more accurate, up-to-date information as they explore what their various options are. So those would just be two specific examples.
One, before I move away from you, Eddie,
Yeah.
since you do work with several statewide implementations, and you know, and getting students to do the plans and try to do them well, what have you seen work effectively from both a State Department of Education staffing level and down into the districts and the high schools? Are there any examples of really good impact and outcomes from some of those programs that you could cite as, not necessarily a capitalized best practice, but some sort of anecdote that shows how something has worked, at least, to some level of hoped for outcome.
Sure. I think, where there's an ILP at the state level, just making sure that down at the district level and individual school level, there's an understanding of and resources to follow through on that is important. It's surprising to me that even where there's state level mandates, oftentimes there's really no time allocated for it in school, in any class, and in many cases where there is time for it in school, you may have an instructor who has no knowledge about the topic, just sort of standing in front and telling the students they have to do something without really giving them proper context or guidance. So it's not the best practice. So where we have policies that are established, really thinking about how to action them in a way that's effective all the way down to the school level is absolutely important. While we sometimes see individual schools have very high compliance and success rates on completion of ILP, that's usually because there's a champion in the school who's passionate about it. In other cases, it may be because at the state level, there have been resources put into place to try to filter that through. But really, at every individual school, you need someone trying to make it happen, because while we try to make our solutions, as all of everyone in the space does, as engaging as possible, I think you said it, until students really understand the importance of it and why, they're just going to view it as a chore. So that's something we need to continue to work on. But it is very helpful to have policies that are clear and required as a first step.
So I'm going to summarize that and add a thing to Dr. Holliday's initial list of things for considerations in requirements and baseline thing of a teacher / counselor professional development type of program to help make sure that the kids are getting the guidance that they need. Matt, your turn.
Sure. I think our biggest challenge is student engagement.
Agreed.
And I think it's just good to sort of set the stage of what we're up against. And when I watch my kids using their devices, and it's probably similar ages to yours, Kevin. When I use, they're using Instagram, they're using Netflix, they're using Disney Plus, they're using just, I don't even know half the programs. I actually went on TikTok one day and I was just like, I don't get it. I do not get it at all.
Yeah.
Right. But those companies are literally spending billions to create the level of engagement that students desire and expect. And so that's sort of the noise and the competition for creating a product that truly engages students. So I think that part is the challenge. I think we do have one big advantage. In some research that we've done confirms this, which is that kids are actually thinking about their future on a regular basis. Some kids are doing it weekly, some daily, some monthly. No one less than monthly though. There are these thoughts that are floating around. And I think the real key is to get them to realize that those thoughts can be used purposefully, or can be acted on, or can be alleviated by doing work in these systems and making progress. There's some real alchemy involved there. And I don't think anyone has solved that, but I do feel like that's what's needed. Part of the challenge for companies like ours is that we have limited budgets, and so much of our budget has to go into meeting those checkbox features, right? Which are sometimes very complex and require a lot of energy. I'm not complaining about that, because I think those are things that need to happen. But the investment needed to get high levels of student engagement, that's another investment on top of all of that.
Thank you. Dr. Holliday, you get to wrap up this topic of student engagement. Is there anything that you've seen during the time that you've been working on this that has really shown, you know, how to do that student engagement piece?
We turn kids off in kindergarten and turn them off a little bit more each year. The problem with our system is the system. The delivery system of education is not about student engagement. It's about compliance and checking the boxes and making sure kids get the right number of credits, the right number of hours, the right number of forms submitted. So until we change the delivery system of education, we're not going to change engagement. Where I've seen people that are changing engagement is where we are moving away from a silo approach. A silo approach is elementary, middle, high school. They don't talk to each other. There's no integration. And then heaven forbid that the high schools even talk to post-secondary, especially technical and community colleges. We just assume everybody needs to go 4 year, and that's not the case. And then heaven forbid we ever engage employers in the process. So for a kid to get engaged, they may need to have a significant adult in their lives. And that's where the technology is really helping in places where they have online mentors connected to industry, where they have academy programs that bring kids together in 9 through 14, where the employers are collaborating with the post-secondary and the secondary programs in an integrated fashion to catch kids early with interest, aptitude, and tracking their own growth and making sure that we link kids to something they want to be engaged in. And they don't know they want to be engaged in anything until some meaningful adult helps them think through that process. So I don't have a whole lot of hope for high schools under the current model, and the pandemic made that even worse. And I don't know that we're going to recover from it. The only way we're going to get more kids engaged is to have more engaging delivery systems.
Great. All right. I always say it's really hard for a student to see beyond the horizon of their parents unless somebody who is not a parent can step in and be a mentor. So I think, you know, connecting those kind of systems and bringing those kind of opportunities into things would be a good future thing to consideration. We're about out of time for the panel piece of this, but I want to just give a quick run through each of the panelists just to say, is there anything I missed? And let's start with Eddie this time. Is there anything I missed?
Just go over some of my notes here. No, I thought that was a good conversation. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Great. Matt, did I miss anything? I'm sure I missed one, but
no, I think that just the one thing for us all to appreciate is that as human beings and as policymakers, we're always trying to figure out how to measure success. And we really struggle with that in career development. And, you know, if you had an entire high school of 100 graduating students and they all became janitors, there's no way on the face of it to know if that was a success or a failure until you talk to all 100 kids. And so that makes it, in my mind, very difficult, frustratingly difficult to measure the success of these programs. I'm searching for a way to do that. I think student voice, student engagement, almost like an NPS score, and then also just the amount of usage a program generates are probably your best proxies of like, is this program delivering value? But those don't really work well at a policy level. So anyway, that's one of my things I'm wrestling with. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think that changing the definition of success is a huge issue. And I say this all the time, that the world needs more happy plumbers and fewer miserable lawyers. And I am one of those lawyers. And so, you know, and I've got a son who just got his first contract as a professional ballet dancer at 20. And that is not a traditional path, but he's happy, and that is a success.
Love it.
So, so that's,
Maybe some of those plumbers should try, or maybe some of those lawyers should try being a plumber for a day.
yeah, exactly. They'd make more money, I think, a lot of them would.
Yeah.
So, okay. And Terry, is there anything jumping out at you that just got missed that would be, you know, sinful for us not to talk about?
Yeah, two things: employability skills, how to track work-based learning, how to engage employers in tracking work-based learning, because you got lots of legal and procedural issues around quality of work-based learning. And then the big outcome, credential wallets and being able to move your credentials to HR companies seamlessly without having to go through a lot of hoops and paperwork. I think the work that's going on with blockchain technology around credential wallets is something that all of these companies are probably really investing in and looking into, and it will make it even more meaningful for adults who need to get into the workplace or improve their employability opportunities.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we at RIT are working on, is integrating a universal lifelong learning portfolio or profile to take with you, you know, that follows you with it, and you're the owner of it rather than the school or the college or whatever. And finally, Casey, anything that would be sinful to not talk about?
Yeah, I think actually you hit on one of the ones, Kevin. I don't know if sinful is the word, but that last piece that you said, and it's where, you know, I struggle and think about a lot is, you know, we want the student to take this with them, right? And how do we get them to have, you know, more ownership of it, right? Is it their school account? Should it be their email? Should it be like, we try different things like that to work with it. And you know, I think that's a really important piece that you bring up there. You know, what does that look like? How do we do? But other than that, again, I think great panel. Appreciate everybody's conversation and guiding it, Kevin.
No problem. Thank you all. We went about 5 minutes over what our agenda says, but that's a win for me. I'll define that as a success. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Robin to set us up for some breakout discussions.
So I also want to thank our panelists today. I'm so thrilled that you were all able to participate and share your experiences with the technology. We're going to take this opportunity now and have a closing at the end to really go into breakout rooms and talk about these different ideas and these different things. So I don't want to get this into an RFP kind of process, but think about some of the issues that you've had or that you think about when you use this kind of technology in a couple different ways. So the first question would be, what are some features, those portfolio things, or career explorations, activities, and assessments, or post-secondary pathways and planning features that are important to you as a state leader or as an organizational leader or workforce department? These are important things that not only do we need to think about, does the system deliver, but how do we also deliver them, as it was mentioned in the panel. So we're going to be using a format called Mentimeter to do this. The first question, we'll talk about the ones I just mentioned. And then about halfway through, we're going to talk about some of those more technical sides of things: connections, data sharing, user accounts and provisioning, security, safety, interfaces, which is becoming something that for someone who's not a tech person, learned a lot about data interfacing when I did our state's RFP for software systems. So I invite our panelists to stay on and participate in our breakout rooms along with those of you who are still on the call. We invite you to please stay. This is our opportunity to give feedback to Kevin and our tech committee as we frame up recommendations for states about this important work. So at this point, we'd like you to open a new window at www.menti.com, MENTI.com, and then you'll go into a code 8069-2860, And you'll notice that on the very first page that you open, it'll bring up portfolio activities, assessments, and pathways and planning. Type in your thoughts, your concerns, your pie in the sky wish list, if you like. What are things that are important in the work that you do in your state or in your organization? Then we'll flip about halfway through to question 2, which is sharing, connections, security, data accuracy, interfaces, and reporting. So right now, Spencer is going to flip us into breakout rooms, randomly assigned. And let's say we give it about 20 minutes to have conversations. You're going to have these folks in there who hopefully our panelists will be able to talk some more about. So we'll do that. We'll come back at, what do you say, Spencer, 4:15, and do a closeout and a final wrap up. So please do stay on. It's important. And we really do appreciate your input and your feedback. So Spencer, why don't you take us away? Taking time today to, I'll let Spencer advance the slide, but taking time today out of your busy days to listen to and listen to our panelists talk about technology and career development and career readiness across the country. We've had some great feedback. I hope you've used the Menti to submit some of your comments and thoughts. I will follow up again with that tool as well, so that you can provide for that. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to close with, and I'm going to give Kevin the last word actually as soon as I'm done here. As many of you know, I worked in Wisconsin as the procurement person and career pathways person to implement in our state what was called academic and career planning. And one thing we went into was a very intentional approach of technology as a tool. So I think it really mimics what the panel was saying, which is the need for that person, that one-on-one, that mentoring, that critical conversation. There's even a recent OECD international report that we've talked about in our state leaders network, that talking with employers even once or twice when you're in high school has a tremendous impact on your future direction. It was brought up during the panel course about this impact of COVID and mental health and what students are grappling with in terms of future orientation. If I'm worried about where I'm sleeping tonight, believe me, I'm not worrying about where I'm going to school and what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So keeping these things in mind, we know technology can only do so much. It is a beneficial tool. It is certainly critical in this work, but it is a tool and it is not the comprehensive nature of career development or career readiness. That's why I'm so excited that we're working with Kevin Houchin to lead our CCD Center's Technology Committee with many of the people on this call to talk about systems that will help us with accountability, certification tracking, data, and wages. And I do appreciate our panelists for bringing up the fact that there's a real importance of features that we have to consider that we don't always think about, getting lost in some of those special bells and whistles and features and assessments, which is the fact that we need good training and technical support, not only for use of these tools, but also for using the tools with the students, engaging them in the appropriate way, framing these conversations in the classroom, not just standing up and going, okay, we're going to take your assessment again. These are important features, especially when we talk about, and I know Terry mentioned it, or Dr. Holliday mentioned it when he talked about data and data exchanging and interfaces, and understanding that getting this data into your state systems is really where you're going to make an impact with the people who make those policy decisions. So in the end, ultimately, I know that Scott and I agree that, and I think it was Matt who said it, that lifetime building, this is about building the skill sets for students to make this lifetime of successful transitions, giving them the necessary ways to handle those things that are going to impact them in their lives, whether it's in education or in life and job loss. What do I do next? Where do I go? How do I get started again? Because we've all lived it at our ages. Our kids need to know how to package those skills together so they can do it too. Thank you again for your time. This meeting was recorded. And I do want to give Kevin one last chance to say a goodbye or special shout out as our tech committee continues its work.
Yeah, so the role of the tech committee is just one of the pillars. I think today's conversations really made it clear that technology is not the solution in and of itself. It is one piece of it, and that the human component of that is really what the technology is trying to enable, and not nowhere near in a position to replace it by any means. So what our committee will hopefully be doing over the next couple of months before the summit in May, the virtual summit in May, is putting together a matrix that has key features and benefits and components of different technologies that are on the market listed within each of the companies, so that if you know a school that is looking to implement some technology, or a district, or are part of a statewide conversation around those things, or you just want to get something to help your kids and you have these conversations and facilitate it, that there will be a matrix of the different technologies that are out there available right now and what features and capabilities they each have. And if you have, the odds of us missing some sort of technology that's out there are fairly high, because there are new things coming to market fairly quickly. So it will be a living document. So if you have additional criteria when we share a draft around, or if you have additional companies